Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Fisher. I teach computer science here in the northwest suburbs. I'm here today to introduce Mark Suter. He's a computer tech teacher for grades 6 to 12 in Ohio, where he teaches multimedia and programming. His classroom is a hybrid of a mad scientist, laboratory, and a traveling circus. The stakes are encouraged, projects are hands-on, and expectations are high. Mark directs RocketTech.org, a small business-like tech club where his students serve local businesses through web design and video production. As Adobe Certified Associate Educator, Mark teaches Adobe Photoshop, Dreamweaver, Premiere, and After Effects for college and high school students, college and high school credits, excuse me. Mark began collaborating with Steve Isaacs in 2012 when they were classmates at Boise State University's education program together.
So game design is an intro to computer science. Like she said, I teach grades 6 through 12. Actually, I have 2 6th grade classes and then 9 through 12. I don't have 7th and 8th. And I teach game design primarily with GameMaker, but we also do Unity, 3D. We're going to try out Agent Sheets. We do some mini game things in Python. We've done Game Star Mechanic. We do a lot of things. So the tool's not that important, really. I use GameMaker Studio, not exclusively, but primarily I do. And so why exactly are we even talking about this? I needed a way. I'm not very good at computer programming. Everybody here is probably a lot better than I am. I'm one of those left-handed, right brain, like I can draw, I do stuff with Photoshop and all that kind of stuff, and then I try to program stuff. I guess stuff, the syntax screws me up every time. And so maybe it's just appealing to me and it's just a cover for why I teach it. But everybody knows kids love video games, and so we're leveraging those interests. Even if they think at first, hey, I'm going to make the next Halo, or I'm going to make Grand Theft Auto, etc. It's great to see them at least apply principles. They can look at those games and see, okay, if I'm within X distance of this person, then such and such happens. And I will at least talk about it in that context, and then I'll show them the list of contributors who made those games. They're like, oh. I'll be like, yeah, and they all have college degrees or industry training, lots of years of experience, etc. So I said, let's start at the beginning and let's build up from there. Ownership is huge. Without it, this is kind of wonky. They make their own sprites. I have them make their own sound, and obviously they're making their own game completely from scratch, not the software. And so they are empowered by that thought of, look, I made this entire thing, and then we publish them. I put them on my Google site so their parents can play them, their friends can play them. I have a lot of students that go on and continue building games during their study hall because it's cool. And they're like, you know what, I'm going to make a game, and I tell them the ideal thing is make a game that only about 5 to 10% of the kids can beat. But all the kids can get through, or 95% of the kids can get through level 1, and about 60% through level 3. And so we talk about this, designing for your user, for your audience, are they adults, gamers, etc. But they own that entire process then. And obviously, I emphasize concepts over the syntax, because I'm not very good at syntax. It's tricky for myself, and a lot of my students are better than me at it. And so we talk about the loops, the variables, all those terms we're going to get to later. But it's a lot less intimidating, and I have now I've just surpassed, it's now more girls than boys in my classes, which is really exciting because, yeah, thank you. And actually, Rocket Tech, which I'll plug quickly, for no reason other than I like it, it's our entrepreneurial tech club, and this next year our president of the tech club is going to be a girl too. So for the first time, she's going to be a sophomore. So the CSTA computational thinking definition, if you've ever read this, that's roughly what it says, but broken down in how it applies to game design. Using a computer to solve problems, obviously that's where we're designing our games, but the problems in this case are, well, Mr. Suter, I want my guy to have to collect all of the parts to get to the next level, that's my problem. Or the guys chase me all the time, but I only want them to chase me when I'm within about this far, right? They're creating their own problems. And so there is agency in that it's their problem as opposed to something I'm telling them to do. The Alex, I see in the back there, you said yesterday, hey, if we tell them to compute prime numbers, they're not going to be real excited about it because I just told them to do that, and it's not relevant to them. But they're coming up with these problems after I give them the basics of the software. Using models and simulations. In GameMaker Studio, you can do a debug mode when you run it, and you can watch all your global variables, your local variables, frames per second, all this data in real time, which is as close to a simulation, I guess, as you can get. Through an automated series of steps, everything's sequential. We talk about sequence and programming, and then transferring to other more complicated problems. This is the one where there is some research out there, and it's still fairly shallow in my opinion, in that will learning these drag and drop things as opposed to just straight up learning the code first be effective? Is there legitimacy in that? And my answer to that is I don't know yet. But that's what I am working to find out. And I started a doctoral program and backed out, and I want to start again going this direction of, if we need all these STEM careers, might game design be a vehicle for that? And I'd like to research that more, so I'm not going to try to BS you and say, yep, it works, it's great. But it does get my students excited, and they take more classes where we do then transfer to Python and Unity, where we use JavaScript mostly, and they understand those concepts. So in my own experience, anecdotally, yes, it does. This is what the interface looks like. There's a room that I'm testing. There's my little character called Sir Clicks-a-Lot. Maybe. It's a little play on that. Sorry, I had a joke, but I don't know if it's appropriate. And then this is what it looks like in debug mode. Over here, we're watching just Sir Clicks here. We're watching all of his data, including some variables that I invented down here, which we'll get to. And then the globals up there. What is the user pressing? What keys have they pressed in order? All that kind of information is there in real time. Anybody ever hear of Mark Overmars? He's the one that originally made GameMaker, 10 years or so ago. But when he was at Utrecht, I don't know if that's pronounced right, it's over in UK. Is that close? He wrote an article, and this is what originally got me started with GameMaker, was I read this, and he specifically asked why not use game design as a vehicle to teach youngsters computer science. And he talks about all the concepts that we're about to talk about, and I thought, that's not a bad idea. We ought to try that. So, as I mentioned, sequence. Of course, when you're baking a cake, the sequence matters. The classic example there. Variables, which I'll show you shortly. For instance, ammo. When I start my game, my guy has 4 shots. When I hit the space bar, he shoots, and that number decreases incrementally by 1. And it has to check that every time you shoot. And global versus local variables, which is where I'm now going to try to jump over to GameMaker. And a lot of these, this example is one that you can download from the Yo-Yo Games website, which is a company that now makes GameMaker Studio. And the standard version is free, by the way, as of a few weeks ago. They used to have a light version with limits on how many sprites and objects you can make, et cetera, et cetera. And me and my colleague Steve Isaacs actually argued with them about this and said, you need to just make it free. So I don't know if my politicking made any difference, but they said okay. So quick review. How many of you guys have even opened up GameMaker, and so you're a little bit familiar with it? Okay, so I'll be fairly quick, but I don't want to completely jump over this. But hey, zoom it. Excuse me. Sprites are just the clothing, the graphics of the items that go into the rooms. And then all I tell my students that you need to know are, at least starting out, sprites, occasionally sounds, objects, and rooms, because rooms are the stage like Scratch has. Okay, the worksheet, the agent sheets has. That's where the action takes place at. And so we start out by designing all of our own sprites. There is a built-in sprite editor, which is kind of cool. Well, that's glitchy. I had to zoom out. It's weird. There it goes. There is a little built-in sprite editor that's basically Microsoft Paint. that you can build your own things. And so again, we do that for a little bit, but I give them about, I say, if you're taking longer than 30 seconds to make your first sprite, you're taking too long. Let's move on. And so I say, okay, timer go. 30 seconds later, okay, you're done making your sprite. Whatever you got, you got. When you're done, you can come back and edit that, which I think Alex even mentioned again yesterday. A lot of what you said I like to use. But the variables, I wanted to show you two specific objects. Actually, let me play the game first so you can see what we're going to be looking at. So I hit the little play button here at the top, and it's compiling. It's going to run here. There we go. So there's my little plane, and I collected this little power up, and it gave me an error, and this was on purpose, believe it or not. But it's saying, and I tell them, don't worry about a lot of this gobbledygook. All you really need to look at is in my plane and the object enemy, there was something that went wrong when there was a collision. It's looking for a variable called isInvincible. And so those of you that are computer scientists, and I don't cover this till a little bit later, but I wanted to do an example of this. I start from the beginning, but I'm kind of jumping ahead for time's sake. In GameMaker, we have events, and then we have resulting actions. And so I always use this English phrasing that Agent Sheets does automatically, which I love, and I wish they would implement this. I say, when my plane is created, this will happen. Or when my plane collides with this, these things will happen. And all of these actions are listed over here on the side in these various tabs. And there's all kinds of great documentation, but I don't show them too much at the beginning. But those of you that are computer scientists, you might notice that when I'm created, I declared a variable called isInvincible and set it to 0. And if it's an intro to programming class, we talk about the differences between the data types, your booleans, your strings, and then I say, well, I explain those. I don't need to go into detail. You're computer scientists. But when I collide... Oh, yep, sorry. So we talk about declaring the variable, and those of you that are computer scientists, and this is kind of backwards, and Alex talked about this yesterday. I keep referencing you, Alex. I apologize. In the enemies, they have the code here instantiated. When enemy collides with my plane, I tell my students to, if you can do it, put it in your main hero, but for this sake. When the enemy collides with my plane, check a variable. You'll notice there are these shapes on the side. If I go down to control, some are squares, and then there's these octagons. Anything that is a square sets or changes something, a variable. If it's an octagon, it is asking a question. If, check and see. And so this one is saying if isInvincible is equal to 1. Now, why was it not able to check that? The error it gave me was basically, I've never heard of that variable in my life. What's that?
You initially set it to 0?
I did, but I set it in my object enemy, or in my plane, right here. Well, when I got the power up, sorry, you're right. When I got the power up, that changed it to 1. Okay, so in the enemy plane, what I'm getting at is scope of variables, global versus local variables. And again, this is a concept I get to down the road. I don't start off with this, but I thought it might work with CS teachers. So what I would have to do is change all of these to global dot. And if I did that for all of those, it would go back. And let's go ahead and do that. When on create isInvincible, that should be, my mouse is sliding down the lectern. That's why it keeps scrolling. And when I collide with that, set this to global dot. Okay, and zoom out here. Okay. So now when I play my game, I should be able to collect the power up, and then I should be able to run over the bad guys with no problem without losing health in the bottom, which it does. And so that's a little demo on global versus local variables and how we communicate that concept in there. Loops, the circlick shoot alarm. So let me open up another game here. Let's do this one. So this is one of the demo files, which I provide the download link at the end of the presentation slide deck that I tweeted out last night. But I have multiple main characters here, one of which is Object Sir Shooter. And basically, when you play the game, if you just hold the spacebar, it just creates an infinite number of bullets as quickly as the game can produce them. And so I tell my students, well, we need to delay a little bit between shots. So yes, you can hold the spacebar, but it should just come out at a regular rate, an adjustable rate. And so at his create event, we turn on his ability to shoot. We set his ammo to 4. And then when the shooter's spacebar is pressed, which, by the way, I'll show you quickly all the other events and stuff you can do. There's a whole bunch of things, the entire keyboard, and we're going to talk about some of these, but collision events, create, and the interaction with the keyboard is what I start my 6th graders out with. If can shoot is equal to 1, and by the way, I get to nest them here, so for my intro to programming class, I might cover this part. If can shoot is equal to 1 and my ammo is greater than 0, then execute this next block of create a arrow at my 0xy, so we're talking a little bit of math there, although I'll tell you up front that the y coordinate is inverted. But Unity is consistent the same way, so apparently there's multiple systems that use that same inversion. And also, hey look, a chance to use zoom it. If this was my game screen, this right here is position 0, 0. And then X increases as you go this way to the room width, which is, 480, or I'm sorry, yeah, 480, no, 640. And then Y increases as you go down. So it's a little inverted to math class, but again, it's being able to pick up that system. Creates a bullet, subtracts ammo, and this is relative, so it's not setting it to the number 1, it's subtracting 1. Turn off my ability to shoot, and then set an alarm. An alarm is just like a countdown timer. There are 30 steps per second, and so when I say 20, that's 2/3 of a second, basically. And so that alarm 5 over here, this is saying when the shooter's alarm 5 goes off, like an alarm clock in the morning. When it goes off, it will, you could probably guess, do what? Right now I can't shoot. I shot 1 bullet. It should turn on my ability to shoot again. Okay, so in alarm 5, set variable can shoot to 1. So if the player's still holding the space bar, it's going to be checking that constantly. Hey, look, you can shoot again. Do you have ammo? If so, do this thing again. And this right here creates a loop then. And so it continues doing this loop until something is false here, which this temporarily will be false when that's a 0. And then we also added the element of ammo here because this is a little bit more intermediate, I guess, for middle school, but it's about right for freshmen, sophomores, all high school students can pick this up. We also have, of course, then a collision with an arrow pack so that I can get +4 ammo. Now, occasionally you'll get a problem where students will say, well, I don't know what the ammo amount is. Well, you could display it on the screen, or if you don't want the user to see a certain variable, how do you keep track of that variable? Well, we have Object Sir Shooter, which I'm going to remember this name because I need to know what to type in for which variables to watch. There's 2 play buttons. This one just straight up run the game, which is what most of my middle school students do. And then I have my high school students run the game in debug mode. Which you saw the screenshot of this earlier.
And I'm gonna, oh, my screen's a little fat, but you can see all of your global variables here in real time. If I click over in the game here, move this over so you can see this. You can see the mouse value changing. The score, lives, and health don't matter at this point because there's nothing programmed to say if there's no health, do such and such. But what I want to look at is how much ammo I have. So underneath here, this is where it's nice to have a high resolution screen. There we go. You see down here in the bottom right, my ammo and my can shoot. So if I go over here and I shoot, my can shoot turned off for a little bit. And if I hold the button down, my can shoot is on, but my ammo is at 0. And so that alone solves a lot of the problems in letting the student look at those variables in real time. Oftentimes, can shoot will shoot one thing and stay at 0. And so they know, okay, I need to somehow turn that back on. And so we start talking about the sequence again, and how do I get that to turn back on? And how often should it turn on? And so if I go over here and avoid these guys and collect an ammo pack, I now have 4. And I could go get another ammo pack, and I now have 8. But if that stayed at 4, even though I got 2 ammo packs, I say, well, did you set it to the number 4 or relative to 4? Did it add 4 or just set it to 4? And so that iterative process alone solves a lot of problems. They like to freak out initially, and so I tell them, step 1 when you see the error message is freak out. Go ahead and freak out. And then when you calm down, let's read about it. Let's read through it a little bit. It doesn't matter if you don't understand it. See what you can pick out from those messages. And they do. Even the 6th graders will say, oh, there's an error with my Sir Clicks-a-Lot, something with such and such. And they'll go to the actual correct this, and it tells you which event was causing the problem. And then from there, there's very few choices on where the mistake could be. So let's move on. We just looked at a little bit of debugging and the if statements. UI design, user interface. That's a big part of computer science, right? What good's a program if nobody can use it except for the person that programmed it? I teach a lot of multimedia classes, and so we talk about CARP, the contrast, alignment, repetition, and proximity, the fundamentals of design. So when I have them create instruction screens, you know, align the buttons up so they're all aligned, they're consistently colored. If you want something to stand out, then you can contrast it with size or color. And making it so, okay, when students have other students play the games, the first thing they like to do is they like to hover over the person that's playing the game, and they're like, no, click here. Okay, now you have to go over, and well, no, you're supposed to, no, don't touch that because that'll end the game. Go around this way, and I say, no, you can't stand there and just tell them what to do. They should be able to play the game and intuitively know what to do. And so that's part of the game design, is not just that. That's not user interface, I understand, but and so they get the hang of that then. Drag and drop, D&D. If you ever search for Game Maker help, which, by the way, it doesn't matter what you're looking for, there's an extensive community so we do Game Maker, shoot arrow facing, I looked up the other day. And there's a lot of help on there in the forums. I've posted in the forums both as asking for help and giving help, and they're very prompt. And so I tell my students, I am not the only resource here. Okay, we're not just teaching them blank code. We don't need a bunch of, well, we need some code monkeys, but we don't need just code monkeys, right? We need architects. We need people that can figure it out. Yesterday at UTI, I kept asking the people in the different rooms, I'm like, what do you want these people to know when they come in? They're like, well, they can't know the interface of the car testing equipment, but as long as they're pretty savvy with stuff and they know how to figure stuff out, I'm like, okay, so that's what I'm going to teach my kids is figure it out. And they at first it's a little foreign because somewhere along the line they lost the I don't care about failing, I'm just going to try it, and if it screws up, that's okay. Somewhere after kindergarten and before they get to me in 6th grade, because they have a healthy fear of that. And it's kind of disheartening and saddening to me that, and I tell them, oh, by the way, I hate grades. I just punch it and like, everybody got an A, good job. And it sounds like a slough way to do it, but I will, subtract points and stuff, of course. But what I mean by that is the best way for me to teach game design has been to tell them we're going to work extremely hard for the next 2 weeks. Everybody has an automatic A right now. Okay, everybody cool with that? You like A's? Everybody likes A's. Yay, mom likes A's. So I tell them the only way you can lose points is if you stop busting your rear end every day from bell to bell. Just create. Here's some cool things that you can do. Go with it. And so I show them a few fundamentals. I'll tease a final game or two, and we'll draw up on the whiteboard, okay, somebody shout out, okay, what should my enemy be? A rotten apple or whatever. And then we'll go through and we'll just make up a game. I'll be like, cool, let's go make that game. And so I will model the process of just, here's some games I used to like to play on the old Nintendo. Let's emulate that and use those same game dynamics, but simplify it a little bit so that you guys can create this in 2 weeks. And so I had kids creating Flappy Bird, and I had kids creating little soccer simulations with little boxes and circles and triangles, which I say because the kids that spend too long on their sprites, I give them boxes, circles, and triangles, and I say, these are not your sprites. You spend way too much designing and not enough programming. But they love it, and I think they end up creating more and working harder than had I said, this is what you need to do, drag this here, type this here, the step-by-step tutorial stuff. They hate that. I originally started with that, and the original Game Maker tutorials are all PDFs with screenshots, and it's really dry drivel. It's not fun, and the kids know that. But when I say, what kind of game you want to make, and I let them run with it. Yes?
Can I ask you just a couple questions about your class?
Please.
Now, do the students, the 6th grade, do they choose to take your class, or does everybody take your class?
Everybody takes it.
Okay. And also, how long do you have them for?
I have them for the entire year.
Okay.
However, the entire from August to December is actually design a company where we create PowerPoint, Word, Excel, stuff relevant to a company they design the logo in Photoshop, et cetera, et cetera. We don't do Game Maker until the next semester, like January. So I made an entire curriculum for them making a company, and that's the entire fall, and then the next semester is this, video. We even do some capture of the stuff with Elgato. And then we do design your own projects, where after we tested all these things throughout the year, the last month is whatever the hell you want to do. They have a Google form they fill out with their easy goals, which is what they have to get done, their medium and their hard goals. If they get the hard goals done, they get an instant A, and then we sit down and talk about them. They design their own projects. So a lot of them choose games, some choose, I want to create just audio and music, and it's really fun. So that's why I say it's kind of a traveling circus. And you had another question.
Yeah, about how many kids do you have in class?
20 in my classroom, roughly, at a time.
And now the high school, they choose to have your class, right?
Yes, that's all elective.
Okay.
Yep, and so in high school I teach Game Maker in 2 classes. One is a Tech 1 class, but we spend maybe 3 or 4 weeks on Game Maker, and then about the same amount of time in Unity after Game Maker.
And actually, and this is going to be showing off since 10:30 already. My Google site, Europe, anyone? I'm trying to take kids to Europe. Funded by Rocket Tech. Unity 3D games. These are guys like this Reed guy. He came in and he's like, I don't know how to make a PowerPoint. And by the end of that month, he was writing JavaScript, and these are all web published games, which Unity allows you to do. And they were comfortable looking at scripts. And my opinion is that it was because we started in Game Maker, and then every time they're like, this is really complicated, I don't know what I'm doing, I'll be like, let's look at Game Maker. Remember when it gave us an error when we didn't declare the variable first? Well, you have to do that in JavaScript too. It just looks a little bit different. And so it felt like it took the intimidation factor out of it. And I don't know why I'm showing that. And so all these Tech 1 kids are making games in Unity after spending the same amount of time in, his game is incredibly hard.
This is Unity, you said?
Yeah, this is Unity 3D. Oh yeah, he starts you up on a big mountain and lets you fall. You have to go collect stuff, but, and you'll notice up at the top in the GUI, score equals 0, get the supplies, there's still 8 left. He's concatenating strings with integers, right? It was really cool because this is the guy that's like, on my iPod, I don't know. But then I don't know. It's just really cool to see, and I don't take credit, but I think it's the game maker that's taking the intimidation out of it. And there's the other things we covered. Anyways, back to the drawing board. Was that all your questions? I like questions.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Obviously, drag and drop is just the beginning in the sense that in just Game Maker, there's only about 100. Now there's a few more. This was a few years ago. Different options, but now, and there was over 1,000 Game Maker language. It's its own language, kind of resembles JavaScript, proprietary language, but there's over 1,000 of those. And so you transfer the same thing to other languages, and it's kind of a similar thing with the Arduino and Blockly and Scratch, and it's much more powerful to learn just the language. I understand that, and I'm probably getting mentally scolded by some of you that why don't you just teach them the language to begin with? Because they're scared of it as soon as they see it, and maybe I'm not breaking it down enough. I don't know, but this is the method I use, and it works. Moving on. This is just a little bit of the documentation. Version 7 was like 10 years ago, but the documentation is still about the same. This will show you, there's an entire thing of how to convert your drag and drop into GML. So if you're used to learning the drag and drop, but you're like, you know what, I'm ready for GML, and I've had kids do this, or they want to do just a little GML, they can go in and look at what the equivalents are of the various things, and the documentation is extensive. And then there's another one in my resources that explains what every single one of these icons does and how you could use it. Okay, it's in the resources. I have my students reference this. I don't spend time going through them. I say, read through it, find something you like, and try and put it in your game. It's very experimental, and it's cool to see the games that come out of it. Okay, so transferring the concepts. Once you've taught this in Game Maker, how do you get it into Unity and therefore other ones as well? The create event in Game Maker looks like this. In my object Octorok, which is the bad guy in Zelda, is created. Set the variable this to this. However, in Unity and JavaScript, it's just a function start, and then everything inside the squiggly happens the instant your game is ran. And so this is the kind of thing I will show them when they're like, function start, what does that mean? And there's all these squigglies and don't worry about it. Look at this. You're doing the exact same thing, just looks a little different. Oh, okay. And they do it. Collision, destroying one of the objects. When my plane collides with the enemy bullet, destroy the bullet. It also subtracts health and other things, but then in Unity and JavaScript, it would look like on trigger enter, other collider. And there's other ways to do this, but I tag all the objects. If it's tagged as a coin, destroy the other thing, which in Game Maker, there is a self and other in here, and you can change that here as well. And so this is another one of the things, especially with the Tech 1 class, that I transfer over. We make fairly simple games in Unity using concepts we've already learned. The syntax is the only thing that changes. I say, don't get caught up in the syntax. We can figure out what the syntax is. You tell me what the concept is. Even the Unity forums have been helpful. Declaring variables, object search shooter. When he's created, set this variable to 1. And there's lots of different types of variables, of course. Game Maker, integers, booleans, strings is about the extent of it. But obviously there's a lot of different types in Unity. And finally, an if statement. Very visual. If this, do everything in the block. I tell them, see these little triangle blocks that you guys have been using for weeks? That's what these squigglies are. This squiggly is that triangle. This squiggly is that triangle. And everything between it is this stuff. Oh. And so they understand it when they see it side by side. And it's a very powerful teaching method I've found. And finally, resources. the references, et cetera, et cetera. I also promised a little bit of research on these methods, and the best stuff I've found is in this peer-reviewed journal, which you can download the entire inaugural issue here. I don't know if they just went under after one issue, but it was, I think, put out by this Rochester Institute of Technology, and they probably lost funding because that happened to a lot of schools. But there's an article explicitly about, I don't need to download that, game programming classes for traditional computer science curriculum. Also, Lisa Sheridan, anybody hear of her before? Lisa Sheridan, she has several articles as well. That's not who I wanted. I'll tweet it later. I pulled it up earlier. I forgot to put it in the PowerPoint last night, so I was scrambling this morning thinking, crap, I forgot to put it in. But I wanted to take a time for questions, and then I wanted to have one of you guys come up, and I was going to teach you. But it has to be somebody who's never used GameMaker before. So, first of all, questions.
Have you ever taught gaming in Scratch?
Yes.
And can you give me a compelling argument that maybe I could take back to my school for why maybe we use GameMaker instead of Scratch? Or do you have obviously you like GameMaker because that's what you're using, so you chose it for a reason. It's more sophisticated. But
To get to the level of games like the Atari and NES style games, it is, in my experience, a more rapid prototype experience using GameMaker.
what about your students' response?
That's what I mean. Gathering that from my students.
Got it. They prefer GameMaker.
That you can make more dynamic, more extensive, multi-level games with a better sprite editor, etc., faster in GameMaker Studio.
Okay.
Now, does that create a more solid foundation? I might invert my argument and say, actually, there's more hardcore programming that's transferable in Scratch. But the concepts are quickly learned in GameMaker.
Okay, that makes sense.
So if you're prepping them strictly for computer science later, and you know they're going to go into a deep computer science field and it's an elective to begin with, you might start with Scratch. I'm not
Maybe
saying,
like 6th grade Scratch.
but this is 6th grade where every kid has to take the class. It's not an elective.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, how do I not scare them off?
Right.
That's why I went with GameMaker, is because they see these cool games and I show them past 6th grade games. I'm like, here's what Josh made last year. Like, oh,
Okay.
cool, yeah, I played that study on. And so then they want to know this.
Okay, perfect.
Yes.
I dabbled in an after-school computer club last year, and I started with Scratch. And the 6th graders came to me and told me, "That's really nice, Mrs. Granite, but can we look at something more?" So it is. So that's why I'm here, because it is being driven. I have to pick something to do for them. They were just so kind to me last year. They're ready to move on, and they asked for it.
Yeah.
So they'll do the Scratch and they'll do it, but they are looking for They came to Unity or something like that.
Yep. How old? 6th grade?
6th grade.
Oh yeah. Unity would be tricky. And the computers are a lot more, they have to be a little more higher end.
And that's why I think this is what I'll start with.
As far as exporting the games, all the GameMaker games, the free version just exports to Windows. And one big downfall, of using GameMaker is it's Windows software. So if you're on Mac, you have to run Parallels and Windows and all that kind of stuff, which I know is horrible. But we're Windows school, and so that works. Game Salad is a good one for Mac, unrelated to GameMaker. And of course, all the other ones you've heard of before, I'm sure. Other questions? Those are excellent questions. Okay, who wants to volunteer? Maybe I should say, who has used GameMaker, and then I'll pick
I
someone.
have never used GameMaker.
Perfect. Come on down. Brave soul. What is your name, brave soul?
Kim.
Hi, Kim. What do you teach, Kim?
I am actually a business teacher transitioning into CS.
Ah,
so
good for you. In high school?
Middle school. So I teach 7th through 9th.
Excellent. I'm going to start you with a partially finished. A lot of times I'll do this. I'll give them sprites and then say, okay, what can we do with these objects? And so we're going to experiment and try to do that really quick. Sir clicks a lot. Let's do level 1 start. I have all this Sir clicks a lot stuff, by the way. YouTube Sir clicks a lot. I don't know if that'll come up. Hey, it did. I have all the downloadable resources and stuff in this whole playlist, all done in Screencast-O-Matic. And all the resources and stuff are in there, so you don't need to freak out. But what I just gave you is this, the starting file. So if you want to continue on from where she's going to go from here, you can go to YouTube and follow those. Cool. Sorry, this is going to be kind of in your way, so.
I have no idea what I'm doing.
That's good, that's good, that's what I wanted.
Okay.
Okay, so first of all, let's look at your sprites. So we have a partially finished game. We have our princess, a goofy dragon, Sir Clix, he's our hero, green dragon, mega dragon, etc., etc. They don't do anything right now because they're just graphics,
Okay.
right? And so, number one thing we should probably do is let's give them a place to live, right?
Okay.
So go down to rooms and expand that. Yep, there is level 1 there already, but let's just right-click on the rooms folder and say create a room. Okay. Now what you're on is the objects tab, which is where we're going to add stuff to our room. And what do we want to add to our room? We probably want to enclose our room so that when we play the game, things don't just leave the room and go away. Okay? So with your mouse, and you already have the castle wall selected, you can click on any of these cells and it puts that in. Now, perfect. You're like, oh, I want to put a whole bunch of them, and just put one. Well, it has these cool little shortcuts down here, and if you hold Control and Shift with your left hand, and now, don't click on that one, but click in an open cell and just click and drag. Whee. Now make a border around the edge. You might have to scroll wheel up a little bit.
Is there a quick way to select them all?
Control right click.
Control right click.
Hold the right. You can just drag over it.
That's not working. Sorry.
Hold Control and hold your right mouse button, and then it's like an
Control.
eraser.
Oh, that's why it's erasing. That's
Yeah,
what you're
okay.
saying. Okay,
Now
I'm sorry.
Control. I don't know. These shortcuts are not very intuitive, but that's what they are.
Whoa.
And actually, the stuff that's outside the room actually doesn't matter, because when you hit the green check mark, it's going to say, oh, there's stuff
It's
outside the room.
gone.
You want me to delete it? You just say yes. So it's
Oh, see, look at me
It
go.
doesn't matter. Now, zoom out just a little bit.
Going
You hit
left to
this-
right is harder than it looks, okay?
It is, you're right. Especially in that confined area.
Right?
So hit the minus there.
This one?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And now you can see your whole room. So
Got it.
now just finish our perimeter.
Okay, left to right again. This could be frightening.
Oh boy, pressure is on.
Oh, and I'm not holding
Control
control. There we go. Ah!
It doesn't matter, as long as the monsters can't get out.
There we go.
And you can build this any way you want it. I mean, you can also change the size of this, which in Scratch, I'm not sure you can. The stage size? Yeah, in this, my students and I got really creative when there was restrictions. I was like, you only get 5 rooms. We're like, fine, we're going to make our room massive, divided by walls. And so you could do that. This is just one little room. Excellent. Okay, hit the green check mark. I think it's green. I'm colorblind, but they tell me it's green. There are instances outside the room. Should I remove them? Yes.
Okay.
Cool. Now, what you just created was room 1.
Okay.
When my students make their games, let's say they have 8 levels, they're like, I need to test level 8. Level 1, play through. Level 2, play through. Level 3, play through. No, guys. Take room 1 and drag it above level 1. Yeah, there you go. So now when you test it, if you're testing level 8, you put that at the top, hit play, and you test level 8.
Okay.
So we have room 1, but there's nothing in it. Now we need some objects, right? So expand your objects. All we have is a wall. That's lame. We need a dude, right? A main hero. So right click on there. Yep. You're ahead of me. Create object. And now let's name him. We have to name them all the same. This is good programming practice for consistent naming conventions. If you transition to GML later, you're going to want to know if it's a sprite or an object. So obj, this is a, sprites or SPR. Objects will be obj underscore. And let's call him sir. And now we choose a sprite. And when you click on that context menu beside it, it'll show you your sprites. So there he is. You can ignore everything on the left side for now, except I will point out one thing. This parenting is very powerful. If you ever play like Arkanoid, where you have the ball and it bounces around, that's a good 6th grade level game, by the way, because there's a built-in bounce. You want lots of different colored bricks. Well, you just make one brick, and then you can just set all the other ones as child objects to it, and it'll take on its properties. And that's a great way to explain making your code succinct. And so imagine if you have a very complex dragon with very complex behaviors, you don't have to, you could duplicate it, But what's nice is you could change the parent and then water falls down to all the child ones. So anyways, I don't explain that right away to that. So, object SIR, how should we control him, Kim?
With the arrow keys.
Okay, so let's say when object SIR, and now click on add event right down here, and you said arrow keys, right? We don't want key press and key release, because if you use key press, as soon as I press and hold the arrow key, it only registers the instant I press it, but then no longer. And so I can hold it and nothing's happening because it only registered once. We actually want the keyboard, which means I can press and hold. So click on that, and use which direction we'll do first. Click on.
Let's do up.
Perfect. So when we click on the up, what should happen?
He moves up.
Now, this is where we talk about video games again. And I often have them go play Pac-Man and similar games. They'll say, in Pac-Man, if you tap the left arrow key, what happens? Does he step left and stop?
No, he keeps going.
No, he just keeps going and he coasts. And so we can do that, or we could do like a Zelda game where as long as you hold it, he's moving, but as soon as you let go, he stops. So which method would you like?
Pac-Man.
Pac-Man style? Okay. So we'll use this first one here with the arrows pointing in all directions, and you can drag that into your actions, and it pops up with this. So which direction should he be moving when I hit up?
Up.
Up. And let's go to speed up. Let's do 4. You can come back and experiment with that, but we'll leave it at 4. And it applies to self. Self always means whatever object you're editing right now. So if you're talking about collisions and stuff, it's other would be what you ran into. So hit OK. And then we could repeat that process for the rest of them.
Okay.
Up, down, left, right. Let's
Can you
just do
copy
up
and
down for
paste?
right now. You can over here, but not this.
Okay.
I don't think. So do add event, keyboard left. And then we drag in our action again. Left, 4. Okay.
I really wish there was copy and paste right now.
I know. You can copy and paste the actions. So if you had a complicated if and a series of things, you can click, shift click, and copy those and paste those. But for some reason, you can't just duplicate an effect. I don't know. Okay. Whew. Now, hit OK. Hit the green play button. Wait. Before we do that, he's not in our room yet, is he?
No.
It's just that we created
It's
it.
an empty room.
Yeah. So go to room 1 again. Double click that. Now, in your context menu down where it says Object Castle Wall, let's choose a new object.
Sorry, right here.
Yep. We want to put Sir in, so click anywhere in your room now. There he is. We probably just want one of him. So check mark and then hit the play button. And this is where I ask my students, what do you predict will happen when let's say I want to escape? You always try to break your game, right? Because that's what people are going to do. Okay, so let's get out of the room. Go up all the way to a wall.
Nothing happened.
Something happened, but not what we expected.
Correct.
Right? So in programming, if you don't tell it explicitly to do something, it's not going to do it. And so you're thinking in your head, well, he should stop. Well, the computer didn't read your mind. You have to tell it. Right? And so when they do a game design document, I'll have them, if they're really struggling, break it down to the individual steps. But so close that out. So you expected it to stop when you hit the wall, right? So let's program that. So let's open up Sir again.
Object, sir?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And in English, tell me what you want him to do. And this is an exercise I do every single day.
When he hits the wall, we want him.
When
Sir hits the wall, you want him to stop.
Perfect.
Or
so
retreat.
We're this far. When Sir, and you said in the event that he hits the wall. So we don't have an event for him hitting the wall, so let's add one. Add event.
Okay.
And these 2 arrows pointing in is a collision. So when he collides with
the wall, it should, and now you can actually use that same octagon arrow thing and just hit the center one. I don't know if you need to, but I always set it at speed 0, so I don't think it matters. But hit OK, and you just stop. That's for any wall. It doesn't matter which wall he hits.
Exactly, because they're all duplicates of the same one. So anytime he hits a wall, he will now stop. Okay.
So, Kim, now what should we do? We got a princess, which you could do the iconic collect all the princesses, and we talk about, okay, is it collect all of the blank? Is it get to a certain destination like Flappy Bird? Is it destroy all the bad guys? You know, how do you advance in the game? And I let them pick one and we go with it. So let's pick one. It doesn't have to be what the tutorial says.
Run away from the dragon, stay alive, kind of long enough.
Okay, so
To not
stay
get eaten
alive
by a
to
dragon.
get to the, let's say we have a door at the end of the level. We
Okay.
have to get past the bad guys.
Right.
Excellent. Like Goombas and such.
Yes.
So we're going to talk about the nouns here. What things am I going to need to make that happen? We're going to have a dragon.
Okay.
And if he's stationary, that's boring. So we're going to have a dragon that moves.
Okay.
And by the way, paths here, if this is a high school class, I'll go into paths. You can predefine paths of curves, lines, so you could have a guard that controls a certain area, goes just back and forth, up and down, or complex shapes, and you can even Bezier curve these paths and have townspeople walking around. It's really cool. But we'll skip that for now. So let's make a dragon. And we have the graphics. We have pictures of dragons. Now we need to make an object that wears that costume, as they call them in Scratch. Okay? So we're going to create a new object. And how would you name this?
OBJ.
Yep. I tell them this is one of the ways you can lose points is incorrectly named. Or if they raise their hand and ask for help, and I come up and they don't name them correctly, I'll just walk away. And they know that means that they're like, oh yeah. Because then they have to go get in line again, so they learn real quick after that. Okay, so green dragon. What do you want him to do? A couple of options. Let me give you some options. We could have him pick a random direction to start and then just bounce around the room.
Okay.
We could have him pick only up and down or only left and right.
Can I do 2 dragons? Because there's lots of dragons to
Yes,
choose
there
from.
is. Absolutely.
Can I
We
do
could use
both?
it. Absolutely. You want one vertical and one horizontal?
And then a random one.
Ooh, I like. Okay, we're gonna have to be quick. Bell's about to ring.
I know.
Okay. So, add event.
Okay.
See the little light bulb there? That create event doesn't mean create something. It means when the green dragon is created, when he is
Put on screen.
exactly
Okay.
Genesis. So when he is created, like that. What should green dragon do?
He has a path, right?
We're not going to
Or
do a
not
path for
path.
now. We don't have time for that right
He's
now.
just moving.
Up and down, let's
Sure.
say. Okay, so drag that in. And now, if you pick up and down, and give him a speed of whatever, 2 or 4. I use even numbers. There's a reason. Hit OK. What that means is it will pick one.
Okay.
So all the ones you press down, it'll pick one of those. Okay. Now, as we learned from Object Sir, you could probably foretell a problem. If we put a bunch of dragons in the room and hit play, what would happen?
It's going to go through the wall.
They're gonna go through the wall. So what do we want to happen?
You want to create another event.
So when green dragon
Collides with the wall.
Right, so you already got it, so I don't need to make you say it in English.
It's okay. Now I've got to remember what it was.
Now
Yes,
this is
stop.
a new one. This is a new one. See the one that looks like a letter K or an arrow bouncing off a wall?
Okay.
That is simply bounce. So if it comes in at a 45, it will bounce off at a 45, et cetera, et cetera. So if they're only going up and down, they're only going to bounce straight up and down. And you don't have to change anything here. Hit OK. Great. You got a dragon that will go up and down. Let's put one in the room or several in the room. So we have to open up our room again.
Sorry.
Yep, you're good.
And
And
then-
change what we're adding, yeah. If you're really mean, you can hold Control Shift and drag lines all over the place. But that's where we start to talk about the balance of fun versus stupid hard. And when it's stupid hard, you know what they instantly say? I made a rage game. Like, no, that's a cheap way of saying, I don't know. Okay. So that will work. And we could play test it, etc., and it will work. And that's fine. But let's keep going. Let's give him an objective to get to the next level. Okay? Let's say princess is what we're going for, right? Because that's a positive object. So let's make an object princess. And the princess isn't going to do anything. She's just going to sit right there.
Okay.
So, and we could name her and all that kind of stuff, but she has no events and actions. We're actually going to put the events and actions in hero.
So on the
Because-
sir.
On Sir, because we're going to say when Sir collides with Princess. I tell my students to initiate those encounters on your hero. That's good. That's it. So now go back to Sir. And in plain English, what should happen when Sir collides with Princess?
You win.
You
Or
win, or what if you
you
have multiple
next
levels?
level.
Okay, let's say next level. So when Sir,
So add an event.
uh-huh,
When sir collides, because
collides
it's a collision,
with, correct.
the princess.
It
you-
should, and we haven't learned this one yet, and this is where the just-in-time learning comes in. It is worthless to try to tell them, you could do this, and you could do this with this, or you could use this, and do this with it, do this, and I did that for one day one time. I was like, that was stupid. Main 2, I think? Oh, I was wrong. Go back to main 1. There it is. There is previous room, next room, a specific room, and see if the next room even exists. So we want next room. Just drag that in.
Oh, drag. I keep forgetting
Yep.
to drag.
You can also right click.
Thank you.
And there's no options for it because that's all it is.
Okay.
By the way, the specific room, you could have a special bonus room. So if you collect a magical mushroom or whatever, you get the bonus room where there's just a room full of coins. And they like that because then they can hide little Easter eggs because they play games that have Easter eggs. And so there you go. So when you collide with it, make sure Princess gets in the room. So we created her, but she's not in our level yet. And we'll put her somewhere. You can just click with this one. It's like
Oh, I
painting.
forget.
Okay,
Sorry.
so there's our objective. Very good. Let's play.
Maybe. Did I miss something?
No, you're fine. It has to compile it. There it is. Okay.
Ah.
Oh, your mouse slid down in it. Yeah, there you go.
Well, I can't even see what it's doing.
There we go. Okay, so our dragons are bouncing. Our guy's coasting,
But I
right?
don't think I said kill me if I touch the dragon.
Correct. So there's another issue. It's not very fun. This game's lame, but it worked. It worked. This is the next one. Very good. So just to finish the game, so there's at least
I
something that can
know.
go wrong, right? There has to be an antagonist, not just a, you know.
But would you put the code on sir, or would you put it on the dragon?
I always tell them initiate from the hero.
So then it'd be sir.
Because they get confused otherwise, because that's a good question. Some of them, if I don't tell them explicitly to do that, they will sometimes put it on the enemy and sometimes on the hero, and then you end up with double coding, redundancy, and it's not good.
Where's my collide? Adamant.
Yeah, so there you go. So had you not figured that out, and they're like, well, he's not hurting me, what do I do? I say, okay, tell me in English, what do you want to happen? When Sir collides with dragon, it should, let's say, just restart the room, since we don't have health and lives yet.
So is that underneath your main again? You go back into rooms,
It's one of
restart?
these. Maybe it's the up room one. Hover
Which
over
one?
those.
This one?
The right one. That's it.
So you're not pointing to her screen, you're pointing to our screen.
Kind of. Sorry, you can't see it.
Wait, what?
So that would then just jump me back to the beginning and restart the room, which is very effective too. You can go ahead and play it. Using just those basic concepts, then we can do health because we can set the health at the beginning, and when I collide with, subtract some health.
I'm trying to run into my dragons.
You're horrible. I've been doing that characters from. That's from Dig Dug. Those are the bad guys.
Yeah.
Yay! I love that game. Yay!
So there you go. And then you would also, when they collide with the dragon, probably play a sound.
Okay.
And so I also, if it's 6th grade, I'll usually provide them with a whole bunch of 8-bit sounding sounds that they can play with. There's a bunch of resources on the Yo-Yo Games website for things you can download. Also, go to File, New Project real quick. I didn't show you this, but there is, the demo games are incredibly complex. Yeah, those, but look at the tutorial section. They're broken down by beginner, intermediate, and advanced. If you look at, go to the beginner scrolling shooter.
Which one?
Either
Part 1 or 2?
Part 1. Recognize that? That's what I showed you earlier. They give you all the sprites, the sounds, the explosions, etc., etc. But you can do anything with them. It just eliminates the time spent creating sprites and all that kind of stuff. If you want to just skip that and just do programming stuff. So we are out of time. Are there any other questions? need to contact me for anything, I have cards up here. Yes. I thought you had a question.
Can you see the code?
It does generate the GML, and yes, there's a third-party one that will do that, but I don't think it's just this.
It doesn't go down the stairs.
It's all done in GML in the back.
And did you say this is free?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
Joy. You zoom into Breakout.
You ever discuss like social issues in class? Like,
Oh, the gender issues and stuff?
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to put a non-violence section, and I want to talk it out.
Not much, no.
These are kids from Farmfield. Is it?
Hey, good deal. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim.